Okay. My name is Jasmine Gast, and I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ.
Hi, Jasmine.
I'm in recovery from addiction, suicide, anxiety, and depression. Tonight I will be doing my testimony in memory of my mom. Today would have been her 43rd birthday. I know she wouldn't have missed this if she was still with us. She sadly passed away from an overdose in 2019. I could only imagine the loneliness she felt in her last days, the hopelessness that overwhelmed her. She was my mom, and I would give up anything for her to still be here. My daughter never got to meet the lady she married grandma. While thinking of a Bible verse for my testimony, this one spoke to me the most. God is our refuge and strength, and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and mountains quake with their surging. Psalms 46:1-3. We should not fear when having faith in the Lord. He is our strength.
Yes.
Life has been a little complicated for me since birth. I am one of 7 children. My mother's firstborn passed away from SIDS when he was 9 months old. She was only 15. This caused a lot of mental problems from there on out, being depression and her anxieties. My oldest sister was born next, and we actually didn't first meet until I was 6, and we have been close ever since. I was born in Decatur, Illinois, with only my mom present. I was born with the last name Hernandez, but to this day my father is unknown. I have never known a person with that last name. My mother assumed a certain man was my father, and that's why I was named that way. After I was born, my mom had twin girls, a son named Justin, who we are still trying to contact and we are unsure of his whereabouts, and my youngest sister, who I also am close to. Throughout my baby and toddler years, I spent many days living with different people. I lived with my grandma in Arkansas a lot. Also, my mom took me to different states on Greyhound buses, places like California and Florida. Typical. She told me lots of stories, like me running to the beach for the first time with no sense of fear. If you know me, you know I'm still very much that same person. We stayed at random hotels and with strangers. I have vivid memories of life at that time. My mother being passed out next to a man in a hotel room and toddler me trying to splash water on her face just to get her to wake up. Looking back, I know my mom was under the influence of something. I'm just sad knowing the things my mom went through and the escapes she's trying to take. One night, while in the care of my mom, I broke my leg walking down some slick steps at a hotel. After this happened, I had to go back to my grandma's care. Life was a little blurry during this time. My life was very unstable, and around the age of 4 years old, I was put into a foster care system in Tennessee. I ended up living in multiple homes, some good, some not so good. I was placed into a home with my younger brother. This home was not a loving home. I remember having soap shoved in my mouth. My bedroom was in a room with 2 inappropriate older girls, and one girl pierced her belly button with a knife right in front of my eyes. I then was moved to another foster home where I witnessed true favoritism. For the other kids, not me, I was just being introduced to what I would feel like for the most of my life is unwanted. I was placed into my last foster home in Milan, Tennessee. This foster home was a dream. I attended an amazing kindergarten with an amazing teacher named Miss Thomas. I went on family trips and I had a lot of friends. They had plans on keeping me. The system is strange though. They received a call about a family member in Illinois who wanted to adopt me, and this family member just so happened to be my great-grandma. She became my full-time mom. I would one summer be allowed to go back and visit that last foster home, and to this day I stay in some contact with the woman I called Miss Pat. My great-grandma and I lived at a small lake, Lake Neoga, or Lake Mattoon if you know. I definitely turned into a tomboy, always barefoot and digging in the muds. My great-grandma enjoyed being social, so we spent a lot of time either out at the bar or over at a fire down the lake. I spent most days drinking Virgin Kitty cocktails and playing games at the bars. My friends were all 4 times older than me and would say things like, "You're wise for your age." I was introduced to church at this time. We attended church religiously. Yes, we were the go to the bar on Saturday and church on Sunday type. However, Sundays were our family days at the lake. Fishing, fried chicken, laughs around the fire. I was a part of all the church events, Sunday school, VBS, and I was even baptized when I was 8 years old. My great-grandma was a woman who loved God, but who struggled slightly with an addiction herself. She soon became too old to take care of me and provide for my needs. My other grandma from Arkansas, who had moved back to Illinois to be close to the family, took me in. She's the only person I know who would never give up on me. I watched her waste life and energy on people who didn't deserve her. Living with her was not always easy. The first place we lived was owned by a man who was verbally abusive. Most of the time we were there, I was called fat by a grown man. I watched this man abuse animals and refused to let me sleep next to my grandma's side of the bed when I was scared at night. He would make it very obviously he didn't want me there. Here comes that feeling again, unwanted. I was young and witnessing how I thought a man in the house should act. Later I would learn for myself what being with an abusive man is like. Not having a father figure throughout my life was difficult, and most of the women in my family were with men that were aggressive or drank too much. While living with my grandma, I was bullied constantly in school for my weight and the clothes I wore. I avoided being home as much as possible due to the loneliness I felt there. I felt lost and confused. I felt like most kids my age were having family vacations or doing other things. I was in a big sister, little sister program that made me feel like I had a friend. I stayed involved with school with band, was volleyball manager, and joined any after-school program I could. After some time, I left this home and lived with other family and friends until my grandma found her own apartment. I became even more of a shell of myself at this time. I began binge eating, self-harming, skipping school so much that the lady at our front office bought me an alarm clock. Some days if I missed the bus, I would just walk. Mind you, I lived 10 miles from school, and dangerous enough, I would take rides from strangers. When I was 12 years old, I started smoking marijuana. I also had multiple suicide attempts that went unnoticed and I never spoke about. I just wanted nothing to do with life. I felt unwanted, unloved, and always felt like a burden to the people around me. I didn't want to be seen as weak, so some things I just kept to myself. I did start attending church again, but just to pass the time and stay social, not to actually learn anything. At least I didn't think I was paying attention, but looking back, I see the love of God embracing me through those tough times. My grandma found a man she wanted to marry, so we moved again. I had to go to a different school. This was where alcohol was introduced into my life. I had new people around me, but still dealt with the same bullying. As a kid, I thought moving to a new school would give me the chance to get a fresh start, but people would always judge me on my appearance. I didn't stay at this school very long. I moved yet again and back to my previous school. I lived with some friends who let me stay with them, and I then had the opportunity to live with my biological mom for the first time. This didn't last very long. Living with an addict made me feel shut out and scared, and at the time I didn't grasp addiction. But I saw it and experienced it when I was told to not come out of my room or was awakened by a wide-eyed mom who made me breakfast at 5 a.m. Or leave me home alone for 3 days when a tornado warning was going off and I didn't have food and no clue where she was. The signs were all there, but I was too naive to understand. One of the worst days I experienced was the day I tried to wake my mom up to take me to school and not being able to wake her and finding out she was under some kind of influence. An ambulance showed up at our house for my mom, and the principal of our school came and gave me a ride to school. Thank you, Miss Sinclair. At this point, I could not go back to my unstable mom. My mother was always pure heart. She always, even in her darkest times, reminded me how much she loved me. She would tell me how sorry she was and made sure I got a card for every single holiday. She was talented and smart, and there was a point in her life when she was sober and in college. She was an amazing artist, and looking back, I can still feel the love she had for me. It was real, but she didn't love herself. On Christmas Day 2013, I sat at the police station as a homeless kid waiting for a DCFS caseworker to pick me up to take me to a new home. I would like to thank the Mattoon Police Department at this time for sharing the holiday treats from your party. It might have seemed small to you, but it made my whole day. When a child goes into the foster care system, they first have to have an evaluation, kind of like a physical at the hospital. And thank you, Melissa, for being the woman who spent her Christmas with me at that hospital. The foster homes I was placed in wasn't ideal. There were 4 girls in one room and 2 boys in another. Things were uncomfortable for me. I was still grasping what was going on in life. School yet again became my outlet, and I was in a gifted math class and got a scholarship to a college summer art program at Easter. I played softball and did anything I could not to be reminded of how alone I felt. I would lay in bed and found reading as an escape because there was nothing else to do. I always tried to fit in wherever I went. Even though I participated in sports at this new school, I slipped into a different crowd. I became the loud girl at this point because I was no longer hiding and being shy, and I wanted to start getting people's attention. Partying and drugs were my newfound escape plan. And this escape only worked until I was passed out on a kitchen floor after given something that was fake. I struggled hard trying to understand why I was doing the things I was doing, and I justified my actions by telling myself, everyone's given up on you at some point. Giving up on yourself is no different. However, it was different because the only person who started and ended each day of my life was myself. Who am I to give up when other people have it worse than I do? I was still living in the same foster home, and inappropriate things became at this house at that time. I didn't think it was a big deal because yet again I was naive and I figured all kids my age were doing the same. I stressed to my caseworker that I wanted nothing more but to move closer to my great-grandma, who by the time had been placed in a nursing home after a stroke. I'll never forget the day I was allowed to move. This was the first day I met my forever family, and I walked into the foster home and saw happy kids running around. I saw the curious faces wondering why I was there, and my foster mom showed me the room I would get to stay in, my own room, all to myself, no double bunk beds. I remember looking at my caseworker in awe as I told her I wanted to live with them. Yet again, the moving process and packing began. I moved and started school at KZ Westfield in the middle of my sophomore year. I participated in basketball, track, softball, FCCLA, science club, National Honor Societies, classical, and many other things. I still had problems fitting in, but it was a little easier at the school, probably because it was smaller. By the time senior year hit, I was in the top of my class and had been accepted into a program to get my CNA while in high school. I finally got to take care of the woman who took care of me, but my struggles had only just begun. Remember how I said that school was an outlet for me? Well, now work is. I began getting obsessive over just how many hours I could work in a week. I would work 16-hour shifts and pick up any other shift along the way, and I would take Adderall to get through my long work shifts. Pills that I found and stole, and I do not know why I did it. I just felt like I had no option if I wanted to work more. DCFS put me on what's called a dependency case. So I was no longer available to be adopted, since I technically was by my great-grandma, the one I was taking care of. And they just wanted to make sure I could be more independent. In my head, the more money I could make, the more independent I could be. It wasn't long until I found a new group of friends who made me feel like I fit in. Well, everyone fits in when you're partying together. One night I was at a party, I had been up all night and realized I had to be at work in a couple hours. When people found out I had to be at work soon, they offered me something and said it was basically the same as Adderall that I had been taking. In that moment, I made the decision to take what was offered, without even knowing what it actually was. Addiction is blind, and addiction is selfish. When you're addicted, you don't see the consequences, and you don't think you're doing anything wrong. And so my addiction began. Not too long after this party, I quit my job, of course. I got too caught up with my so-called friends and their problems. I was always trying to help everyone. My focus on other people ruined my own self-worth, and I no longer felt like I mattered unless I was helping somebody else. I was enrolled fall semester to start nursing school that year. I moved into my dorm room a day late because I was on a drug binge the week before, and the downhill spiral really began. I moved away from every single person I knew. I was getting skinny, which meant I thought I was much prettier in other people's eyes. I spent a lot of time experimenting with anything and everything. Nothing was off limits to me. And my first year of college included hiding my addiction from my friends and family. I was pretty much functioning normal, but going slightly crazy. I was partying more than going to class, and I was sexually assaulted in the backseat of my car before I woke up into an ER room finding out my BAC was 2.9. I had no memory, was taken by ambulance. I did not have clothes, shoes, keys, or phone when I arrived. This event sent me into a dark hole, and I felt like everyone on campus knew what happened due to a video also being taken at some point that night. I couldn't come out of my room for weeks, and I tried to find a solution to my depression, and that was a suicide attempt that left me in the ICU and then a mental hospital. I remember when I woke up on suicide watch. I wasn't sure how many days I was out. I just remember my body being so swollen from fluids and my hands looked like giant paws. Part of me was sad I was still there, and yet I was still happy to be alive. I ended up having a severe seizure from withdrawals, and it was clear I couldn't let this happen to me again. I got into counseling on campus and re-enrolled in school, but then just didn't go. I was gaining friends in the city that I felt like I could relate to more than college kids, and I quickly migrated to St. Louis. We had 6 people in and out of this small apartment. I spent many nights not knowing where to sleep. I would either sleep in my car, a table, and I even made a bed on a shelf in a closet. Yeah. With a pillow under my back. Make it come here. Sorry. Since I really lost the hold of myself, I also lost the hold of my financial responsibility as well. I was getting pulled over for having no insurance on my car, and before you know it, my license was suspended. So please pay your insurance. One night I was on the south side of the Loom at a church food pantry trying to get food for my friends and I, when a lady there looked at me and said, "You don't belong here, sweetie." She had the most sincere eyes and deep southern voice. We had a long conversation and she ended it by telling me she would pray for me. We come across these passing faces throughout life and they are put there on purpose to stay with us. Everything has a rhyme or reason, and I believe she prayed for me. I decided to pack up and travel the States with a friend. I was always self-aware when things were getting bad and I needed a fresh environment. We panhandled and Gast dug our way to San Francisco and back. Yes, with a suspended license. I stayed sober on this journey and learned more than I ever would sitting in that same boring city. We hiked into caverns, played in drum circles on Venice Beach, parked my car in Arizona just to look at the stars in the middle of nowhere. I had this whole new view on life. Kind of wish I never came back, but I wouldn't be here to tell you this if I had it. After returning from the road trip, things started getting worse in St. Louis that I worried for my life and moved back home to be closer to family. I had felt my addiction becoming worse and worse, and I knew I needed help, but I didn't want to admit my wrongdoings and let the people around me down, so I stayed in my addiction. I was with a man who also had a strong addiction and quickly learned that 2 addicts can't be together, especially if one of them doesn't want to get sober. Not long after I moved back, I found out I was pregnant. I want this story to be like other moms whose kids saved their lives, and when someone does get clean, I applaud them. Having a kid wasn't enough for me at that time, and I was too far gone in dealing with a mentally and physically abusive man. I spent time in domestic violence shelters and tried leaving my abuser multiple times. Statistics say it takes 7 times for a woman to leave an abuser, and this last time was my 7th. After a jail stay, an IV addiction that was only getting worse, DCFS case, and much more, I finally tried getting sober again. I can't tell you how many times I tried over and over again. Step 1. I had finally come to the conclusion that I was powerless over my addiction and compulsive behaviors, and that my life had become unmanageable. It took the support I had around me to get me on my feet. Today, I stand here firmly to say I didn't come this far to only get this far. And you didn't come this far to only get this far. Every time I look away, there is so much life left to live. Through my sobriety, I got my license back after 4 years, which was a struggle, and if you know, you know. I've been employed for the past year with a job that I absolutely love as a professional maid, and I have finished my time with any legal court system. No more forgetting court dates and random warrants. I attend a wonderful church and my daughter goes to a Christian daycare. That was still the biggest blessing. This is all I ever wanted in my life. Step 3, I made the decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God. God saved me and planted my feet on solid ground. My daughter is full of joy, laughter, and sass. I've heard just about everyone tell me more than once she's my mini-me, and I can't disagree. She is beautiful, smart, and almost 3-year-old that I hope one day will watch this and see the strength her mother had to stand before you and share. My daughter did in fact save my life. It was just not in the way people would think. She made me a mom and gave me meaning. Becoming a mom allowed me to learn what loving truly is. I am now over a year sober and counting. 13 months. I now try to do what step 12 says. Having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps, I try to carry this message to others and practice the CR principles in all my affairs. No matter where you are at in your addiction or recovery, it's never too late to be better. It's never too late to love yourself. I wish I could see myself through my daughter's eyes, like the way I saw my mom through my eyes. I had so much hope and confidence in her. Just remember, someone out there is watching you and wanting nothing more but to see you be the best version of yourself that you can be. Because we can all do better at something, even if we start small. I'm part of a family where addiction runs through our blood, deep. But I think at some point, someone has to put a stop to it. If you are also part of this generational curse, let's break the cycle for once and for all. Thank you.